Joining me live now from his electorate of Hume is the opposition leader, Angus Taylor. Angus Taylor, thanks so much for joining us. You said at the start of your press conference on Friday that becoming the leader of the Liberal Party was the biggest honour of your life. Isn't it just second prize at the moment, though, and heading towards third prize?
Well, great to be with you, Andrew. It is the biggest honour of my life, but as you point out, it's a great challenge. It is indeed, I think, the biggest challenge of my life as well, and I'm realistic about our starting point. The Liberal Party is at its lowest ebb since it was formed in 1944. We've got to regain trust with the Australian people, with our supporters, with those who have voted for us and those who we would like to have vote for us into the future. And that means we need to focus on Australians' priorities, holding a bad Labor government, a rotten Labor government to account, and focusing on restoring Australians' standard of living and protecting their way of life at a time when Australians feel as though those things are moving away from them. They know that their standard of living has been in free fall under a hopeless Labor government that simply doesn't understand how the economy works, and they feel strongly that our way of life is under threat. And I think the tragic events of Bondi late last year have, of course, exacerbated that greatly.
Well, Angus Taylor, I mean, you keep calling them a hopeless Labor government, and so do your colleagues. How did they win more than 90 seats then?
Yeah, and we have to do better. There's no question about that, Andrew, and that's the point I make. We've got to get Australians back to a place where they have the confidence in us as the party that can restore their standard of living and protect their way of life in these tough times. And that's the job we have ahead of us. You've heard me talk already about key priorities. Immigration. We've got to make sure that we get the standards up. And the numbers have been too high. But we've also got to make sure that Australians who want to come to our country, or foreigners indeed, who want to come to our country, who don't believe in our way of life, who want to bring the hatred and violence from another place to our shores, that the door is shut. And that must be a top priority.
I'll get on to that.
For the Liberal Party and the Coalition.
I will get on to that. But first, I want to ask, what will make you different to Sussan Ley as leader?
Well, those priorities I've been laying out, I think, are a different emphasis, a different focus, and you're going to keep hearing those from me and from the team more generally. Jane Hume, who I'm absolutely delighted is the deputy leader, she'll be talking. She's been out with me over the last day or so, starting to talk about these things, focusing on the issues that Australians are facing, focusing on holding a bad Labor government to account that has let Australians down, Andrew. Did
Sussan Ley said she never got clear air. What's your response to that?
Well, after the vote back in May last year, I became a member of her leadership team, and I sought every single day to make sure that the Liberal Party was in the best possible position to hold this bad Labor government to account and to lay out our priorities. And I thought that was the responsible thing to do, and you know that was a strong focus for me. But we've got to the point where there was a strong view in the party room, as you said a moment ago, that there needed to be a reset, a refocus and a reprioritisation of our focus, and that's exactly what we're doing here. And that means having strong immigration policy, taking the green ideology out of our energy system so we can get focus back on affordability.
But I guess what you're saying,
a centrepiece of the Australian aspiration.
We'll get to all this, Mr Taylor, but I guess what you're saying is there might have been others white-anting Sussan Ley, but that wasn't you.
Well, I sought to be a supporter of her leadership every single day, and most importantly, a supporter of getting the priorities in place that would restore the confidence in the Liberal Party that we need. Now, we've got to a point, as I said, where the view of the party room is there needs to be a reset. I've taken on that great privilege, and I'm going to be fighting every single day for hard-working Australians, for their priorities, and making sure that they're our priorities, Andrew.
All right, let's talk about immigration. Since the 1970s, when Gough Whitlam ended the White Australia policy, we've had a non-discriminatory immigration policy. Are you looking to end that? Would you like to see less immigrants from Muslim countries?
Now, our focus is on bringing people to this country who believe in our values, who come here because they know this is the greatest nation on earth. They want to contribute and they want to be part of our way of life. Now, if they reject our core beliefs, if they reject our focus on democracy, the rule of law, obeying the law, our basic freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, if they reject those things, the door must be shut.
Do you think that means less immigrants from Muslim countries? Do you think that's what less Muslim immigrants? Is that what that means? Who's disregarding our way of life?
Well, Andrew, we've seen a non-citizen in this country in recent times disregarding our way of life in an extraordinary and tragic way. Let's be clear. We've also seen a Labor government that is bringing people back, the so-called ISIS brides to this country, aiding them back where there's real questions about that. But look, more generally, I would say that this is not about any particular race or religion. It is about people who accept our way of life. And this is what I firmly believe Australians want to see. We are a great immigrant nation. I grew up in a great immigrant town.
I think the majority of viewers would agree to you, but I agree with you, absolutely, but I'm just wondering, is there a particular religion or race or what have you which has caused you to come to this conclusion? Is it Bondi? Do you see the Bondi terror attack as linked to a need for a change on immigration?
Well, I think there's no doubt that Australians reject Islamist extremism. There's no question about that. But right here where I am in Oran Park, we have many moderate, sensible Muslims who absolutely reject what happened at Bondi. They think it is appalling and they want to be part of the Australian way of life. And I want people in this country who love this country, who are happy and proud to stand in front of the Australian flag, who believe in the Australian aspiration, who want to own a home, who want to raise a family, who want to start a small business. I mean, that's what it's about, Andrew.
So how do you weed them out,
we want in this country,
Mr. Taylor? How do you weed them out? How do you? Well, is it a series of tests like language tests or ideology tests? Is it closer monitoring of their social media before you grant visas? How do you achieve this?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that there's a role for our intelligence agencies to play in this, and I think a bigger role. I think it is important that our intelligence agencies look at people who are wanting to come to this country and they do assess whether or not these people have demonstrated in the past they reject our way of life, that they demonstrated whether they want to bring the hate and violence from another place to our shores. I think there is a heightened role for that. There's no question about that, Andrew. And I think it is important that Australians have confidence in immigration to know that the people who are coming here believe in what we believe in, as I've laid it out a moment ago. And that, I think, is an important focus that needs more prioritisation.
Is this roughly the same policy Sussan Ley was going to release? Because she was preparing with John O'Donoghue an immigration policy.
Well, I haven't seen the details of that policy, Andrew, but what I do know is this is the right policy for our country. The standards have been too low, the numbers have been too high, and we haven't explicitly shut the door on people who reject our way of life, who don't believe in our core values, the things we say in our citizenship ceremony. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, Andrew. If you're going to come here and you want to be an Australian citizen and you're going to recite those things in the citizenship ceremony, you must believe them. I think this is a very reasonable thing, and I think it's something Australians will agree.
Because Sajid Akram, do you see some irony over the fact that he came here under the Howard government?
Sure. I mean, and, you know, I accept that there's been mistakes made in the past over an extended period of time. I'm not pointing the finger just at the Labor government, although I have to say I think this Labor government hasn't had the moral clarity when it comes to Australians' way of life and what we believe in that it needs to have. But I do accept that there have been mistakes made in the past. We need to tighten up. We need to get this right. Will
you set a net migration target as part of your policy and permanent migration target? Are we looking at the reported 100,000 less net migration? And when might you release this policy?
Yeah, Andrew, look, as I said, I think the key principle here is that the numbers have been too high, the standards have been too low, and there hasn't been that sharp focus on Australian values that I talked about. I will say more about our priorities and our policies in the coming days. I've got to appoint a Frontbench, of course, in the coming days, and we'll work through this and we'll lay it out in more detail. Look, the numbers under Labor have been just extraordinary, way beyond what this country can absorb. Over 500,000 a year, completely unsustainable. The stress that that's created for our services, for our infrastructure, for our housing, it has just been completely unsustainable. And so we do need to have numbers that are reasonable and we can absorb, or else young Australians won't be able to get into our home. We won't be able to keep the infrastructure build up to pace with the housing build. Services will be, we won't have the level of services that we need. So that has to be the focus, and we'll say more about this in the coming days. It is a priority for us. So
the issue is, and I call it
sooner rather than later.
I call it a vicious political circle. One of the issues is that business actually wants more immigration. With the ageing population, they don't think there's enough workers. So how do you balance those two things?
Well, and it's a good point. I understand that. I mean, we've had a collapse in productivity in our economy, and of course, one of the ways businesses have to try to solve that is with more workers. I think we should fix that productivity problem as a top priority, of course. But I would also say that the standards have been too low and have been wrong. I mean, you've got to bring people into this country with the skills that we need, and that sharp focus on those skill gaps has to be a key focus for the government. I don't think it has been. I think we have not thought about those skill gaps as carefully as we should when it comes to immigration, and the result is we've seen skill gaps that have remained.
The PM made comments yesterday expressing concern that police stopped people praying during the recent anti-Herzog protest. What do you make of that and the police response to the protest more generally?
Well, Andrew, can I say that people have the right to pray, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that they don't. But these were protests where we heard people calling for violence. Globalise the Intifada is a call for violence, let's be clear. And the police needed to be able to do their jobs. They do a tough job in these circumstances. And I think we should respect the work they do. They have to make difficult calls, and they have been making those difficult calls, and I have great respect for the police who do that hard work. I tell you who I condemn in this, though. I condemn a Prime Minister who cannot call out people who are calling for violence. Globalise the Intifada is a call for violence, and this Prime Minister could not condemn it. That is simply
Are you
not
talking
good.
about Grace Tame there? Do you think she should be stripped of her title, Australian of the Year?
Well, I think what should happen is this Prime Minister should start by condemning that language. It is unacceptable. The way we deal with people making calls that are not consistent with our way of life is we start by condemning it. And if the Prime Minister can't even do that, it shows that he has not got the leadership capacity. He doesn't have the moral clarity. He doesn't have the understanding of right and wrong that I think is important in a leader of this nation.
Will Tim Wilson be a shadow treasurer?
I know you're going to try and drag out of me the front bench announcements this morning, Andrew. I'm not going to make them. I am going to say that there's some extraordinarily talented people in our team, and we have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of key areas and priorities to focus on. The economy, of course, which you're referring to a moment ago, energy, immigration, housing, getting young Australians, giving them hope again that they can own a home, making sure that our borders are secure and that our country is secure against growing threats around the world. And I am going to be putting great people into place to prosecute the case and develop policy and priorities in those areas. And I'll be announcing that in the coming days.
All right, there's just a couple of things I want to ask you about, just because they've been reported apart from anything else. It's my understanding too, Jane Hume won't get finance. Is that fair?
Look, Jane Hume, can I say how pleased I am that she's the Deputy Leader? She's been with me yesterday and she will be today here in Oran Park talking. This is on the outskirts of Sydney, big new growth area, housing developments happening. We'll be talking to people in this area about the challenges of buying a home, the challenges of making ends meet with a Labor government that has overseen a collapse in our standard of living. And I know Jane is absolutely committed to focus on those issues. She's passionate about having an economy that delivers for Australians, where people can get ahead, and she'll be prosecuting the case on those things throughout the rest of this term.
So she's getting housing then, from the sound of that.
No, Andrew, I'm not making announcements today. What I'm saying is she's going to be prosecuting the case on our core priority.
You've let people know, haven't you, though, that Jacinta Price and Andrew Hastie will be back in the shadow ministry, perhaps even shadow cabinet. What do they have to offer?
Well, they're magnificent members of our team. I mean, Andrew, with the extraordinary experience as a member of the SAS, the Special Forces in this country, an officer in the Special Forces, a guy who deeply believes in this nation, what it offers and how we have to protect it. Jacinta, of course, I mean, she needs no introduction to the Australian people because of the role she has played in focusing on uniting our nation at a time when the government wanted to divide us. These are incredible Australians, and I am so proud to have a team with people like Jacinta and Andrew in it.
I had someone suggest to me yesterday that Jane Hume's gaffes with her work from home and Chinese spies comments cost 8 seats at the election. Menzies Deakin, Ford Petrie, Bonner Banks, Hughes Sturt. I wonder if you'll meet anyone today who worked from home. Keith Wallahan works from home. Keith Wallahan blamed Jane Hume at a Victorian Liberal conference for the Chinese spies comments for the loss in his seat, and she apologised in that forum. How can we be assured your deputy won't make the same sort of mistakes again?
Because she's recognised that and acknowledged that. In fact, we heard that a moment ago in your piece up front, and Jane knows that. But Jane has also been an incredibly important part of our team over an extended period of time, believes in what I believe in, the importance of a strong economy, restoring our standard of living, protecting our way of life. And I know she will be a magnificent contributor to the team, to getting our priorities right and to communicating that to the Australian people in the coming months.
And you had these mea culpas yourself. Now, my understanding is that in that budget lockup where Peter Dutton decided to oppose Labor's tax cuts, and you agreed with him, Jane Hume actually was said to be wrapped up in a ball to me because she couldn't believe the Liberals would oppose tax cuts. And that grave electoral misjudgment, how can you guarantee you won't do it again? And do you think it will ultimately harm you?
That's not the correct account of events. And I'm not going to go into that in detail.
Are you saying you oppose them?
I have always advocated.
You're saying you oppose the decision of Mr.
I've
Dutton?
always advocated. Well, Andrew, Philip Curry reported some time back that I proposed a way forward with lower personal income taxes, and that is already something I've put on the record because I believe indexing, we must be the party.
Would you look at that again, indexing?
Well, I knew you'd go there, Andrew. But look, what I would say is under Labor, we are seeing rising personal income taxes. I mean, they carry on about how they're bringing down personal income taxes. Well, fine. We made a mistake in the election campaign. But let me tell you, when inflation rages and it goes up, as it is under this hopeless treasurer, people pay more tax as a proportion of their income. And he loves that, because he's been running out of money and he wants more of it. Now, we do need to be the party of lower taxes. We need to convince Australians that we will be the party of lower taxes, and we will take a strong policy package to the next election.
Might that include ending the indexing of tax cuts? Or taxes, should I say, income tax?
Well, what it will include, it will include absolutely is a focus on getting inflation down, getting interest rates down, restoring Australian standard of living. And of course, one of the real culprits of Australians feeling poorer is that when inflation rages, they pay more personal income.
Because
that's just the reality.
Yeah,
I mean, this government, inflation is a massive tax on Australians.
Sure.
And this government is failing Australians. They promised inflation was back under control, and up it goes.
I understand your point. I understand your point. But if you want lower taxes, you have to get the money from somewhere, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of it. Are you prepared to have a proper go at cutting the NDIS? Right now, the government's only looking to restrict it to 5 or 6% growth. Would you like to cut it further?
Well, your question is a great one. You say, if we want to be able to pay for these things, lower taxes, then we have to find the money. I tell you, the best place to find the money is a fast-growing economy that is not inflationary, Andrew. If you have a fast-growing economy that's not inflationary, not only are households better off, their incomes go up, but the government is better off. Meanwhile, this government is failing Australians. The Reserve Bank
I'm nearly out of time.
Forecasting growth rates that we haven't seen. But this is a complete and utter economic failure under this hopeless Treasurer and Prime Minister.
I'm sorry about this. I just want to get a couple of quick things in. Would you like to? Would you go again with a proposal to cut public servants' jobs as a way of reining in government spending?
Well, look, I'm not going to announce all our policies today, but what I will say is government has to be fit for purpose. It has to be effective. It has to be able to deliver the services that Australians want and deserve, and that will be our focus. It shouldn't be bigger than it needs to be, because hard-working Australians have to pay for that government.
All right. Would you expect to win Farrer? Are you up against it there? What effect do you think a Farrer by-election loss might have on your leadership?
Oh, look, it's going to be tough. There's no doubt about it when you've had a popular local member, as we've had in Sussan, and can I acknowledge her extraordinary service to the Liberal Party over a long period of time, including as leader since May last year. When you've had a popular local member like her leave, it's very challenging. And so we recognise that challenge, but we'll be out there arguing the case for why people should put their confidence back into the coalition, the Liberal Party, and that will be a big focus for me in the coming weeks and months. And but I don't underestimate the scale of the challenge, which is where we started this interview with, Andrew.
And finally, Mr. Taylor, One Nation preferences. Remember back in the day, John Howard putting them last always. Do you think going forward, Farrer, the general election, you might have a rethink about that, given where the political landscape is?
Well, my starting point with people who are thinking about or who have voted One Nation is to show them respect. They've made their decision, or they are making their decisions for a reason, and we have to convince them that we are a better alternative, a party coalition of government that can serve them better than the alternatives. And that has to be our focus. I mean, the party organisations decide on the preferencing, and that's not something, obviously, at this point in the cycle that we're focused on.
Somehow I thought you'd say that. Angus Taylor, thanks so much for your generous time.
Thanks, Andrew.